This arc only just got started, and it's already competing for the most emotional, heart-wrenching moments of the season. It only took an episode to turn this series on its head completely. Let's get recapping. We begin right where we left off. Mob is bleeding out in the middle of the road, while a crowd starts forming around the accident. The reckless driver fidgets with his phone to make a call, however, all the electronics begin to act up and become unresponsive. People around the city notice tremors, then this is awakened. I've heard fans use different names, unlimited percent, unknown percent, or mystery percent. I'll just call it the entity. It walks around the streets, destroying the roads and buildings in its way. Teru intercepts the entity in the middle of the forest. He fruitlessly attempts to reason with Mob, but it only responds by attacking Teru. After giving up on trying to converse with the entity, he attempts to restrain it, though Teru is quickly overpowered. Frustrated, he unleashes his powers wildly, causing the entity to lose its grip on the bouquet. Teru notices it's distracted and figures obliterating the flowers will put an end to things. Despite his best efforts, he doesn't seem to be a match for it. Their fight gets dragged to a residential area with plenty of civilians still around who have yet to evacuate. The entity blasts its energy outward, demolishing the neighborhood. It takes Teru every ounce of strength to merely stand before this monster. Or so we're led to believe, as Teru declares victory over his rival, managing to save the lives of those caught under the debris. With Mob gaining consciousness in the meantime, only being able to watch as a prisoner in his own body, as the entity walks past the now collapsed Teru. Along the way, it's close to demolishing a convenience store in its path. Koyama and Sakurai also make their stand against the entity. During this time, we witness what everyone else has been up to. Tsubomi is concerned, but still waiting for Mob. His schoolmates all notice a picture of him floating around online. The photo is also brought to Reigen's attention. Meanwhile, the government has stepped in to deal with the entity by sending criminal espers to fight it. Among them is Suzuki, who knocks out all his companions, claiming they'll only get in the way. As he makes his leave, his former underling, Hattori, says his farewell, ending the episode with Suzuki diving into the eye of the storm.
Was he wearing a parachute?
No, he wasn't.
After season 1, it seemed our supporting cast had been stuck in Arrested Development, and even the cast introduced in season 2 didn't become more prominent. And yes, I know the series is not called Mob and Pals, however, the secondary characters had a strong sense of urgency, complete with their own personal journeys, and their own needs and wants were more respected. Over time, they hadn't become worse characters, but definitely faded further into the background. The worst offender being Teru. He had a great start, an arrogant middle school esper who looked down on both his enemies and allies. Running into Mob caused Teru to have an identity crisis. He placed so much importance on himself based on his abilities. Thanks to his utter defeat by Mob, that changed his perspective of his place in the world. From that point on, he tries to impart this knowledge to other espers like Ritsu.
I know, you think you're really special. Don't try to live relying on psychic powers.
And Shimazaki.
If you think everything in life goes exactly the way you planned it, then let me teach you a lesson by taking you down.
But since then, it was noticeable he was losing his relevancy, especially midway through the Claw arc. Dragon Ball fans will be familiar with this sentiment, as we've noticed what's happened with once rival characters like Tien or Piccolo. I think it was forgivable to believe that this was going to be the fate of these characters, but this episode proved this belief wrong, and potentially the whole arc will do so. Though bringing the focus back to Teru, now he had literally developed in terms of power. In the battle with Claw's 7th division, he was barely able to keep up with the elite Scar members. By the time they're fighting Shimazaki, he's the default leader and is the person who's most effective in battle. This is also reinforced by the techniques he picks up along the way, the air whips, pyrokinesis, and the telekinetic blast. This leads us to his most recent accomplishment. It was clear unless the show was gonna pull something out of their ass, Teru was never going to beat Mob. Not even speaking of this form of him, though it's further evidence of Teru getting stronger, considering he didn't just get wholly annihilated like the last time they fought. It also found a clever way for Teru to have a strong, triumphant moment. His contributions are negligible in the world domination arc. He fails to save the Prime Minister or defeat Shimazaki, for which there are no consequences.
So, I'm free to go then?
Yes, sir.
In the Divine Tree arc, he loses to both Dimple and Mob. Again, no consequences. However, it's absolutely imperative that Teru was involved in this battle. He cannot be easily removed from this arc. With the number of people rescued and the possible implications of awakening Mob, these are not inconsequential actions. Saving lives on its own is heroic, yet the show adds a personal element to it as well. Teru knows Mob would never forgive himself if he caused the injuries and deaths of these people. His pleas had also awakened Mob's consciousness, and hopefully that will lead to gaining control of his body. Lastly, on Teru, we've known he wants nothing more but to be on equal footing with Mob. Emphasis on equal, as he wouldn't even accept Mob perceiving himself as lesser than Teru in the last episode, which was just a hint at the number of callbacks to their Season 1 battle. All these references I'll mention are used to remind the audience of that fight. Teru repeats Mob's lines about not using your powers against others.
You shouldn't use them against people.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about your psychic powers.
Have you forgotten? You shouldn't use your powers against others.
Before whipping Teru across town, the entity takes time to choke him a bit, just as he had done to Mob. Who knows, it might have taken that personally, might have held a grudge. The most prominent reference was Teru's clothes being ripped off combined with the top of his head being shaved. In their previous fight, this hurt Teru's pride deeply.
You think I look like some middle-aged pencil pusher now, don't you?
I didn't say that.
But you thought it.
And it was easy to perceive his shame. A few pessimistic lines are thrown in on that fight about not being able to change and being insignificant.
Don't you get it? People can't change that easily. Just give it up.
This time around, we witness the culmination of Teru's efforts. He is put under the same pressure once again, though now he stands proud that he was able to make a difference. The entity will likely have to go face to face with Suzuki next. I don't like the odds considering he nearly died last time, and that was against 100% Mob and not this monstrosity. However, this does serve as a good method to bring a lot of the supporting cast's arcs full circle. Not much going on with most of them at the moment, beyond setting up their awareness of the situation. It's not often we get the world's perspective, so it's another element that adds gravity to this event. However, that does bring to mind how uneven the world building has been. For example, the government was aware of Claw's organization and its plans. They have ties to mercenary espers and have prisoner psychics too, but never seem interested in any other odd event that takes place. So as I mentioned, the world's involvement is irregular at best. Also, couldn't fit this naturally anywhere, but Hattori had one of my favorite gag lines in the last season.
Hattori's psychic ability allows him to infiltrate and control systems dealing with electronic devices or waves, and he has no idea how it actually works.
Teru steals this episode, obviously. His growth from smug brat to impassioned hero comes naturally. I'm looking forward to seeing if they can replicate this quality of character work the next episode. That's all for now.